Hey guys, you can hear me. Put I don't know. Put a 1 in the chat. If you can't hear me, put like go Kamala if you can't hear me. We'll give it a couple minutes for people to join on in here. Of course, I'm always a little bit challenged in how to use technology, so it's going to take me a minute to set this up. All right, hopefully you can see the screen now. Remember, put a 1 in the chat just to make sure I can. You guys can actually hear me. Last time I did this, I was like talking for 15 minutes, and it turns out nobody could hear me the whole time. Oh, we got Louise, the elf, in the chat. Louise, can you hear me? All right, perfect. Excellent. Welcome, Trading Strategy. So people are coming into the house here. It's 8 p.m. Central. Hopefully not too late. No, it's too cold to actually go outside. That's why, in the winter, I just tend to hibernate, collect my dividends throughout the year, start eating them, eat the dividends, eat the rich. Yeah, people maybe taking eat the rich too far these days. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. So just waiting on people to get on in here. Give it a couple minutes. And then we can start on our topic about UnitedHealthGroup. Not been a very good couple days for UNH here, right? Like I am a shareholder of UNH. I've owned it for several years. And it's had back-to-back negative 5% days. So down 10% in the last 2 days. That's billions of dollars of market cap, right? So the company, $530 billion, you're losing like $50 billion. That's it's a pretty big chunk of change just in 2 days. Okay, we got Kefi in the house as well. Welcome. And if you guys have any questions or want me to talk about anything else, be sure to put it in the chat as well. We're not exclusive just to UNH and murders. We can talk about more than just those two tonight. I know this is always kind of last second whenever I live stream. I usually just have to be in like the right mood. It's been about 8 months since the last live stream. I was like on April 20th, oddly specific day. But gotten very high since then in the market. Like stock market has just done so well this year. Like let's go look at the S&P 500 here. Oh man, past year it's up 33%. Like this is why the stock market is just such a great builder of wealth. Honestly, getting 33%, no, actually 34% if we round it up. Like, just imagine just putting your money into the market, passively just making this much money, like 9 basis points expense ratio, basically free money. All righty. So I think we got a decent amount of people in the chat here. More people will come on in as the night progresses. Hopefully it's not people's bedtime yet, but some people also just catch us on the replay, and that's fine too. All right. So Luis has confirmed that you can all hear me. So I think we can kind of get started here. So let's talk a little bit about UnitedHealthCare Group. Been all over the news. I wish it was under better circumstances, but hey, all news, it's good publicity, right? Like that's what people always said, right? Like whenever Donald Trump was running and whenever he was on the news, even if it was for negative reasons, people were like, hey, as long as you're on the news, that's usually a good sign. But I don't know, man. Lately, when UNH is on the news, I don't know if it's necessarily for good reasons. But today we're going to talk about if you are evil for owning UNH stock, if you're a bad person for owning UNH stock, for simply just being a shareholder, does that mean you're like the same as Brian Thompson? Like, are you the one screwing over people if you are a UNH shareholder? So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. All right. And we'll also talk about if UNH is potentially a buy. I mean, if you think about it, past 2 days, it's gone down 10%, not necessarily because of the company fundamentals, right? UNH is still making a lot of money. Could be at a discount here. Could be a buying opportunity. And UNH is a big dividend payer. So we're going to talk about their recent CEO assassination. But in case you don't really know what UNH does, UNH is a super large company, right? It's based out of Minnesota, where it's super ice cold right now. Like, it's really cold here in the Midwest. I can only imagine how much colder it is in Minnesota. Some are saying that it's how ice cold UNH is to its customers. Like, that's why UNH is so cold. It's because it's so cold in Minnesota. So UNH, UnitedHealthGroup, they make money 2 primary ways. The primary way that they make it is selling health insurance to individuals, to families, to businesses. So when you buy a health insurance plan, you pay a monthly premium. Now, in return, they help cover your medical expenses like doctor's visits, prescriptions, hospital stays. This is what's called health insurance premiums. The more people they insure, the more in premiums they collect, the more in money they make as a company. Now, this is ideally what should happen, right? They also offer services to other healthcare providers. This is through their other segment, their Optum segment. And this is the part of their business that makes money by offering things like medical advice, pharmacy services, and managing healthcare data. Now, they charge other healthcare providers for these services, and they also help manage drug prescriptions and healthcare costs for insurance clients. So, guys, those are the 2 primary ways. Of course, with a big company like this, they make money lots of different ways. But we can just see how big of a cash cow this company is, right? 10 years ago, hard to believe December 2014 was 10 years ago, but it was. They brought in $130 billion. Fast forward 10 years from now, or 10 years today, which is December of 2024, they have basically tripled that. They're now making $400 billion a year. That is just insane. So that's rapid growth that they've had. It's just like every single year, like clockwork. The revenue they are making just keeps going up. That is incredible. If you guys want to see what an amazing financial statement looks like, look at UNH. Come down here. Their earnings per share has also been going up. So if you are a shareholder, you have been rewarded quite handsomely, right? They went from $5.70 in December of 2014. 10 years later, you're clocking in around $15.38 most recent 12 months. Absolutely insane. Just checking the comments here. Hey, what's going on, Dan? Good to hear from you. I'm sure you've been following the UNH drama as well. Alrighty, so UNH, long story short, they make a ton of money. And there's also another positive sign. One thing that you should also check when researching your companies, the amount of shares is also going down. So if we go to this is UNH's shares outstanding history. So it's actually a good sign if shares are going down. That means you're getting a bigger piece of the pie if you're a shareholder. So about 20 years ago, they had 1.2 billion shares. They issued more shares in 2006, 2007-ish timeframe. And then ever since then, they've been buying back shares. Oh my gosh, look at how many shares they've bought back. This is an incredibly good sign to see. This means they're not issuing new shares to raise money, right? Their everyday, day-to-day operations are making enough money where they don't need to dilute shareholders. So they've continued to buy back shares. Another positive sign that you want to see from your companies. Yeah, definitely been very insane there, Dan. Absolute insanity. This is definitely a unique case. It's not something that I feel like we see here a lot in the United States. I think that's why it's just been so surprising. But yeah, we'll definitely talk a little bit more about it. All right, so um, UNH is of course also a very impressive dividend company. So let's look a little bit at their dividends because I've been a shareholder since the start of 2019. And I've definitely been getting paid lots of big dividends. Whenever I don't have anything to say, I'll just keep saying like dividends. As many different voices as I can. All right, so their dividend history has been really good, right? So they've paid out dividends, but they've also increased their dividends for 14 straight years. They also have a super juicy 5-year growth rate of raising their dividend 15% a year on average. So that is really good. So a lot of you are probably heading into that time of the year where you're going to get your bonuses at work if you're lucky enough to get a bonus. And you're also getting into that time of the year where you might get your annual raise. So most companies are going to try and jip you. They might give you a 3% if you've been a good little boy or good little girl this year. UNH has been giving you a 15% raise for just being a shareholder. That's amazing. Now, as we might learn, they might be doing some unethical things to get you that 15% raise. But I have no doubt that your employer's probably been doing some unethical things as well. All right, so payout ratio of just 30%, that's really good. You're getting $8.40 for every share you own. I mean, UNH probably needs a stock split right about now. I mean, like just 2 days ago is trading at over $600 a share. Like to see a nice stock split happen. Dividend yield of 1.45%. So a lot of newer investors, I think they look at the dividend yield, the starting dividend yield, that is a little bit too much. I'd actually challenge people to actually look at the dividend growth over time. And that's really where the kind of the cheat code of dividend investing comes in. So companies such as UNH that are constantly raising their dividends so much every year, you're going to be better off in the long run investing in companies like this than just maybe investing in a company that has a higher starting yield, but doesn't raise their dividend as much every year. Yes, we see Kefi saying what I just talked about here. So yes, the dividend yield is very low. I will give you that 1.45%. It's going to take a couple years for that cow pounding to really get that yield on cost. But I'm going to show you here in a second why it might actually be better to get companies that have a lower starting yield but a super juicy, impressive growth rate. That's actually more impressive. But good question, though. All right, so let's take a look at that dividend history that we just talked about. So if we go to their 10-year chart, this is where the juice really starts to show, right? So 10 years ago, they were only paying like 38 cents a share. That has ballooned to over $2.10 now every single quarter. So when I first started buying UNH right around here, right, they were only paying 90 cents a share. So me just being a shareholder, it has more than doubled how much they pay every single quarter. That is just really impressive, really juicy. You can see over the years, guys, consistently been paying out dividends. Was once an annual thing. Then, of course, they probably had some change in their business practices. And now it starts to become a quarterly thing starting in the 2010s decade. And this isn't even counting all the amazing capital appreciation they've had as well. So UNH has done super well. All right, let's take a look at that dividend yield because I think this might help you with your question there, Kefi. So dividend yield over the last couple of years, rarely does this ever go into the 2% range. It looks like during C19, you could have gotten it over 2%, but the starting yield is barely ever over 2%. It's usually in that 1.25 to 1.75% range. Also, be sure to hit that like button, guys. That definitely does help out a smaller channel like this. Really appreciate it. All right, so the yield on cost, though, this is what gets super juicy. So if we look at it from a 10-year perspective, right, those that owned it 10 years ago, Kefi, pay super close attention to this. So if you bought your shares 10 years ago, you are now getting an 8.33% yield on your shares. This is the super juicy part about dividend investing. It takes a little bit of time for you to get there, but once you're there, I mean, that's amazing. Like what are my shares that I bought start of 2019? So they're about 3.21%. I mean, sure, you can still get a lot of great ETFs that have a higher yield than that, but they're not going to grow as fast as UNH. So if you're in this for the long run, the long term, you can get a really powerful yield on cost. So we can see, yeah, I mean, if you bought your shares in the before the 21st century started, you have an amazing yield on cost that's over 100%. I don't know how realistic that is for everybody, but even if you bought, sometime in the 2000s, you're getting a ridiculous yield here as 20%, 25% plus. So super juicy there. All right, guys. So in terms of my stake in UNH, I've been a shareholder since about the start of 2019, had an eye on it for a while. I'm not sharing my actual Fidelity portfolio on here, but I currently own about $5,200 worth of UNH. It makes up about 2.6% of my portfolio. I've made over $2,100 in capital gains, and that has taken a little bit of a drop just because they've had back-to-back down 5% days, but still doing very well overall on UNH. So let's talk about the next topic here, guys. Lately, man, maybe I've been feeling guilty about being a UNH shareholder. As we've seen, they've been making record profits, but generally that comes with some cost. You often have to screw over humans to record record profits. Now, lots of Americans, they're frustrated with their health insurance. According to surveys, only about 68% of people who are in poor health, only 68% of them have a positive view of their insurance provider. That's not a very high number. Now, why UNH has been on the news so much lately is apparently they've been notorious for not paying claims. They've left humans on, why did I say humans? They've left patients on the hook for their expenses. So they are paying premiums every single month, but when you actually need them to come in handy, they don't do anything. And I can see why people would be mad about that. Like, health insurance is ridiculous. Where I live in America, I'm sure it's ridiculous elsewhere as well. But it is just so expensive. I can't imagine living life without it. If you try to pay things out of pocket, it can get very expensive really quick, especially if you're sick. So yes, very shady business practices there. So I can see why people are mad about that. Now, we all know the reason why I'm talking about UNH, right? They've been all over the news here. So they have a CEO, not Brian Thomas, the actor, or Brian Thompson, the actor. Talking about Brian Thompson, the CEO. So he was waiting for an investor day presentation, and he was obviously ambushed as he was about to walk on over there. So it's been all over the news, been kind of surprising because you don't really hear about cases like this in the United States. Now, in other more third world countries, things like this happen all the time. Like there's this crazy statistic in like Mexico that like there was like 150 presidential candidates that were like killed in like their last election season, which is just insane. But yeah, so that's what we got going on over here. And this is kind of a crazy case because like the assassin, like he did a really good job hiding his face, he apparently checked into some like hotel in New York or hostel in New York like 10 days ago And he always wore a hood, always concealed his face. The only time that he removed his little mask was when the person that was checking him in at the hotel needed to see his full face just to make sure it matched an ID, which of course was a fake ID. So it seemed like it wasn't just like a spontaneous killing. This is very methodical. Some are saying this is like a targeted killing, like a professional hit. I could see that being possible. The few photos that we do have of the assassin, he looks very young. I wouldn't be surprised if he was less than like 30 years old. And so far, like, you have like all of the FBI working on this, the New York City police department, and they still have yet to release his name. Like, they seem to somehow know what he was doing 10 days ago, but they still don't have his name out there. And the best photo they have is one like very super blurry one of just like part of his face. So still no ID. And now they're saying that they actually think he's not even in New York City anymore. So it's one thing to maybe even be able to identify him. It's another thing to then be able to find him. And he does seem to be somewhat of an expert or professional in how, being able to escape the authorities here. And some are also speculating that he might not even be an American, right? Like, this might be some sort of foreign setup, potentially. Who knows? But anyway, guys, so one interesting thing was that the bullets that were found at the scene, they had the shell casings. They said the words deny, defend, and depose. And these weren't any just random words, right? These are the same words that were on a 2010 book about how shady the whole healthcare insurance industry is, called Delay, Deny, Defend. And that book is about insurance companies not paying claims. So this is definitely a very targeted attack. Dresh saying ELV is also having a rough patch. Is that also another insurance company? Elevance Health? Yeah, down 20% in the last couple of days, down 6%. Yeah, so I don't think this is like this whole like claims being denied. I don't think it's a UNH specific thing. Like, UNH might be the most notorious. UNH might be the biggest. But this is like a shady tactic that a lot of these insurance companies pull. And it's unfortunate. And we're going to get into why this seems to be a bigger problem overall. So you think this Brian Thompson, he was the guy that died. You would think a lot of people would be sympathetic that somebody would just be shot dead in cold blood. He was also, a family man. He had a wife, 2 kids. But nope. If you go into basically any news article, any YouTube comments, any Reddit post, you see nothing but overwhelming support for the shooter. I'm like this is going to bring, ironically, this act of violence will somehow bring some sort of world peace, because this is like universally bringing everyone together in terms of just how much people hate insurance companies and how much people might be willing to look the other way if somebody who is rich, somebody that is believed to be doing shady business practices, is just assassinated in cold blood. And this really makes me wonder too, like, okay, let's say they catch this guy, right? Let's say they catch this probably was the work of a group. It probably wasn't just a single person. Let's say they catch this person, right? Let's say he has a jury trial. All you need is like 1 or 2 outliers of that trial to think that his ends justified the means, that he was warranted in doing what he did. There's a chance he could get off like scotch-free. And who knows what sort of ripple effect this will create then, right? Are we just going to have people, anytime you might disagree with a company's business practices, you get a free shot at killing their CEO? Like, what does this mean going forward now? I'm also a little bit surprised that a CEO of such a large company would kind of be moving so freely on his own, especially in a city like New York City. I'm surprised he didn't have security detail with him. So apparently a lot of these insurance companies like CVS, UnitedHealthGroup, of course, they removed info about who their leadership is as like a security measure. I'm sure that information will come back up, but like, who knows if this is just going to be an isolated incident. So yeah, let me know what you guys think, like in the comments. Like, do you think these type of incidents will be a little bit more common going forward? Like, especially because of the response. That's the part I really want to highlight, is that people are very supportive of the shooter. And it's, I think what's also adding to the mystery is we don't know who the shooter is, right? Like all we got is like like a still image of the dude smiling. It's really baffling here, guys. And we can go into like just any random video and just look at what the comments are, right? So I haven't even looked at these comments beforehand. So let's just go to this New York Post one, right? I won't actually, but just look at the comments, guys. Like the comments are overwhelming in the shooter's support. I don't think CPR is covered by insurance. Lead poisoning is not covered by UNH. CPR claim was denied. And look at how many upvotes it has, right? Look, it's just totally ridiculous how people are so supportive of this. Looks like a pre-existing condition. Sorry, can't help you. And what's amazing about this is that this means like this type of behavior was, people know somebody or have been directly impacted by something similar to this, where they can't feel sympathetic for the victim here. It's quite this interesting situation. And then I also just did want to clear up one thing. A lot of people have been saying that this is like the CEO of UnitedHealthGroup. That's actually not correct. What he was the CEO of a certain business unit of United Healthcare. He was the CEO of United Healthcare, not the parent company, which is called United Health Group. So just wanted to clear that up, because a lot of people are saying this was the CEO of UNH. That's not necessarily true. Yes, rumors of his death were greatly exaggerated. So on the official like Facebook post about Thompson's death from United Health Group, most people reacted with a laughing emoji. So there was 40,000 reactions to the post. 35,000 of them were the haha emoji, and only 2,200 were the sad emoji. So it's just kind of crazy, like what's going on right now, man. If you pay attention, you can hear the world's smallest violin in the background. And this isn't just this video, guys. I didn't even know what this video would be. You go to any sort of video, this is what all the comments are. If you go to any Reddit post, this is what all the comments are. It's just crazy. Absolutely insane to me. Okay, so now the part you wanna hear about. Do I feel bad for owning UNH stock all these years? Does owning UNH stock make you a bad person? Whew. All right, this is the $1 million question. This is what separates the boys from men. So do I feel bad that I profited off a company that may have given other people a lot of trouble? I think it depends. Like most things in life, it's not going to be a yes or no answer. Was I the one who directly told UNH to deny people's insurance claims? Did I tell them that your Aunt Agnes couldn't get that hip replacement? I bought UNH so many years ago because I predicted that they would rapidly continue to gain market share. Insurance is often a profitable business because you can collect more money than you pay out. It's a reason why Warren Buffett loves insurance companies. It's a winning business model. You buy health insurance companies because basically every human being needs healthcare. There's a lot of people playing in this game. Governments often subsidize some of those costs, and it can be often contractual based. So there's guaranteed revenues in this space. But then there's all that other stuff that I pointed out at the start of the video. It's a big dividend payer. It's from a strictly financial perspective, they have done very well. I haven't even talked about their capital appreciation here, guys. So past 10 years, they are up 504%. That means you got a 50% return on your money each of the last 10 years on average. That is ungodly amounts of money. And that's not even including all the dividends. That is absurd, right? This could have easily made people multi-millionaires. But of course, as we're learning, it seems to have come at a cost for a lot of people. Let's read some comments here. So, comment from Drush. The response is disappointing. I don't think this is the best path to reform. And I don't think single payer is a great solution either. So, Drush, I assume you're an American as well. You know, is the response disappointing? Like, people are obviously entitled to their opinion, right? I don't think this is the response that I would have predicted anytime, somebody dies. But, people these days, they're pretty extreme, right? Like, if this many people hate you, there's probably a reason. And then, of course, like, you don't hear, like, the people that usually make the loudest noise, they kind of overshadow the people that aren't really making a lot of noise that might disagree. So there might be a lot of people that are kind of disgusted that somebody was murdered in plain public for everyone to see all over video cameras. There's probably a lot of people that are disgusted in that too, that just aren't commenting, right? And then in regards to healthcare, I think healthcare is one of those things that, like, you always hear every 4 years, like, politicians promising to make things different. I don't really see any changes coming to healthcare ever, right? There's just so many hands that are, lobbying, campaigning, and a lot of that might be UNH, right? They definitely know how to pay off politicians, keep the system corrupt. I know, like, around where I live, everything is starting to just become one company. Like, one company is now just buying out all the smaller, like, regional hospitals. It's all run through the same thing now. So, like, people don't really even have a choice anymore. You have to use one healthcare provider. I don't know if it's like that where you guys live, but it's definitely becoming a thing. Kefi, I don't own it, and I know that I know more about it. I don't think I would buy it. Yeah, I mean, of course, like, when you research a company, right, you go to their investor relations page. They're only going to point out the good things about their company, right? They're going to talk about all the people that they helped. They're going to talk about that. They're not going to talk about all the people that they screwed over. That's probably not going to be included on page 5 of their investor relations PDF. It's just not. Right. So there's only so much that people know about companies. And then, guys, that kind of gets me into another point here, is that what about all the good that UNH has done as well? I mean, again, I want to emphasize that I'm not in any way, like, defending or trying to be some sort of cheerleader for UNH. At the same time, what about all those insurance claims that get processed every single day that are successful? What about all the people whose lives were enhanced by UNH? Like, what if you had their insurance and actually got what you needed, right? They do a lot of good things, and they also do some bad. But which one do you ultimately get remembered for in life, right? This is the same. This is kind of like a metaphor of people's life in general. Right. There's a lot of good things that you do, but I'm sure everybody has done some bad things in their life as well. There's no right or wrong answer here as well. And I know I'm creating probably like a whataboutism argument here, but aren't most companies, they usually have some skeletons. Like, why are certain tobacco companies allowed to exist, right? Like, let's look at MO, Altria Group. They're up 38% in the last year. That's a very juicy return. They pay an amazing dividend yield, 7%. They've done very well in the last 10 years, right? You're getting a 7% yield every single year. You're getting solid return in capital appreciation. Last I checked, tobacco it's not good for your health usually, right? It's not enhancing the longevity of your life. So, does that give somebody the right to then go and harm the executive board of Altria Group? Is that what we're heading into next if things like this continue to happen or continue to be celebrated? If police can't find who's responsible for it. Who knows? I mean, that's obviously, I think, a stretch, but like, could make the argument for that, right? And what about companies we all love, right? Like Coca-Cola, done very well in the last 10 years. 53% gives a 3% yield. Last I checked, products that Coca-Cola is giving to people usually have a ton of sugar in them, right? That's not causing people to live longer. Even with all the Ozempic that people take, you're still probably putting on a couple pounds if you drink a couple Coca-Colas every day, right? So, where do we draw the line? Does this mean that somebody now has the right to go and attack them? The people that work at Coca-Cola? It was also reported that the shooter, that he stopped at a Starbucks prior to the execution. So does this mean that all the shareholders of Starbucks are now accessory to murder? Like, is that how it works now? I think it's a fine line, and I don't know where we actually draw that. Dresh, what is the solution? Dresh goes on to say, better regulation, certainly a crackdown on denials with real fines. Yeah, I do think this is something that needs to be looked at a little bit more. And I honestly think like the shooter, I hate to say this, but I think his motive, it's starting to work. Like the fact that I'm making this video, that we're having these conversations, it's raising awareness of something that is a serious issue. People are now starting to talk about things like this. I wouldn't be surprised if there starts to be more investigations into this, if more laws get passed. And that's probably for the betterment of society. It's pretty crazy how that works, guys. But yeah, I mean, I would be curious to know, has anybody ever had like a claim that was denied by their insurance? Like, I've really only had like one major surgery in my life. I'm pretty sure I have Blue Cross Blue Shield. I don't go to the doctor that often, but I know if I didn't have insurance, that surgery would have been well over $20,000. That would have been a big financial burden for anybody, right? And I was thankful that my insurance covered it. But yeah, that'd be crazy if they didn't. Kathy says, it used to be illegal to profit from healthcare, but that went away with the law that allowed HMOs. What I also find very weird about the United States is that like every other advertisement that you see on TV is usually some sort of pharmaceutical company. And I always wondered like what the actual purpose of some of these ads were. Like, sure, if you have a Pepsi or Coca-Cola commercial, I understand those, right? Like people, when you go to the store, they want you to buy a Coke product versus a Pepsi product. But like the average person is not educated on what pharmaceutical drugs are. So, how is that going to impact their decision making? And I really like, if there's a healthcare professional watching and maybe knows more about this, like what exactly is their end goal with all these pharmaceutical ads? Because it's not like, oh, like these pharmaceutical ads are like once in a blue moon. I was watching TV the other day, like usually when I watch sports, like every other ad is like some sort of pharmaceutical commercial. It's always about something. Men are like, it's usually something like Viagra related. It's usually something Ozempic related. Those are really strong or really popular ones, right? So I assume what they're trying to do is like, they want people to go to their doctor and start recommending them these things. I don't know why, but that doesn't sound like it should be illegal. But yeah, I mean, certainly how much money do these companies spend on advertising? Alrighty, let's go to Dresh again. Full disclosure, I do work in healthcare, not insurance, but I think payers can play a role in enabling better coordinated care, not defending unethical business practices at all. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is that like with health insurance too, it's not like you just have like unlimited options, right? Like a lot of us, we're kind of forced to just choose what our employer gives us, right? So I think I have Blue Cross Blue Shield. It's not like, oh, it's not like I did all this like research and investigation into what Blue Cross Blue Shield does, that I made a pick with them, that I chose them over another sort of insurance company, right? I was kind of forced to play that hand. Drash RFK Jr. wants to ban those ads. Yeah, I mean, if somebody could tell me why they actually have these ads in the first place, I would be very surprised to learn about it. I mean, I guess we can ask ChatGPT. What is the purpose of pharmaceutical ads on TV? Pharmaceutical ads on TV have several purposes: direct-to-consumer advertising, educating patients, informing them about specific conditions, symptoms, and available treatments, brand recognition. I mean, like, if you go to the doctor, and like, the doctor is obviously a professional, well-educated. If they recommend a brand, I'm probably going to trust them, right? Like, how much more is seeing it like, if I see a bumblebee as a mascot, recommending me Viagra, am I going to be more trusting of them just because I saw their ad on TV, or because a doctor or professional is actually recommending that to me? Differentiation. Okay, I guess I could maybe see that one, right? Like, if a lot of these have lost patent protection, which they often do, you can now, there's really no difference between the brands, so then you might be more likely to choose one over the other. Increase prescription demand. Many pharmaceutical ads encourage patients to speak with their doctors about a medication they've seen. Okay, see, this is the part where this is what I assumed was the reason. And this doesn't sound ethical to me. Like, shouldn't you only need pharmaceutical drug if you legitimately have an issue? Like, this shouldn't be, oh, hey, I was watching TV the other day that made me realize that I need Ozempic or something, right? Like, I don't think that's how it should work. Market expansion. By advertising on TV, pharmaceutical companies can reach a vast, diverse audience. This is particularly important for medications that may not be universally known. I don't know. I mean, half the time I'm really not listening. It's always kind of funny that they always mention like the side effects, and they say that part real quick, and it's usually something like terrible, like, oh, your penis might fall off, or like death. Death might be a side effect of the medication. So, that usually gets me to not want to do most of these things. Apparently, pharmaceutical ads are regulated by the FDA. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. So, I mean, oh, okay, good. The Chat GPT comes to the rescue, that there's also some criticism. So, encourages unnecessary medication use. Yeah, this is what I was worried about. Increased healthcare cost, right? Yeah, pharmaceutical companies often pass the cost of advertising onto consumers, and then they overemphasize the benefits, right? So you're only going to usually talk about the good parts about the medication, and then you're going to downplay the bad parts. So, yeah, interesting that the United States allows that, but basically every other country in the world does not allow advertising of pharmaceutical products. All right, Kefi. I had a $5,000 claim denied in the 80s due to pre-existing condition. I was overcharged 300% for a sleep study and fought for a year bill to reduce to $2,000. That is insane. And that's what I also don't like about like the whole like healthcare industry, is that with anything else in life, like, you can see the price ahead of time before you actually purchase it. With like health insurance cost or healthcare cost, you only get the bill after the fact, and then you get BS like what you're describing here, and you have to argue like tooth and nail. I remember like I think a few years ago, I went to the doctor, was probably only there for like 20 minutes. I think that's even generous. I was probably there way less than that. And then I was shocked to get a bill for like $600. I was just like, what the heck? How is this possible? Just ridiculous. All right, Kafi, same message there. Drush, maybe the doctors see these ads too. Yeah, I don't know how that works. Like, My cousin is actually a medical doctor. I've asked him like, oh, does like, back when the C-19 vaccines were happening, like, did they get paid more if like they got the Pfizer one or they got the Johnson and Johnson one? I forgot what his answer was, but it sounded like he said it didn't really matter. I'm sure these companies, they probably have some sort of deal with the actual hospitals. Hey Norman, how's it going? Good to see you tonight. Happy Friday to you. Kathy, I agree with banning the ads. Doctors should tell patients what they need. Patients should not tell doctors what they need. Yeah, I'm just baffled that this is even how the industry works. And think about drugs that like have a high abuse um, threshold, right? Like something that you could legitimately get addicted to, right? Like opioids. They had that whole scandal a couple of years ago, and still happens, right? Forget what the actual names. I think it's like Oxycontin or something like that. Yeah, I mean, basically these drugs get people hooked on them, right? Then you're paying an arm and a leg for them, but then you can't live regular life without like these drugs, right? Then you start to have withdrawal symptoms. There's a chance you can overdose on them, right? It's not good for your health long term anyway, right? And a lot of people die from it too. It's a really sad situation. So yeah, I don't know why we're able to advertise things like that. I don't know why people can just go up to their doctor and ask for things as if this is some sort of like wish list. No, it's the holidays, but that shouldn't be a thing. Yeah, guys. So just let me know if you guys want to talk about anything else. I think we have hit kind of all the UNH news here. Um, it's going to be interesting. Like again, let's say they are able to identify the shooter, right? Like now that then they'll have to do some sort of huge chase to go and find this person. I've been watching a lot of true crime lately. There's certain countries you can go to where they don't have like those treaties, those extradite. What's it called? Where you can't like go, where you can't actually chase them. Like if you're in like Brazil, they don't have that treaty where you can like send them back to the U.S. I always blank on what it's called. Yeah, that's what it's called, extradition. But yeah, like, what if he goes to Brazil? What if he goes to Cuba? Now you'll probably never be able to find the dude, right? Also, let me know if you guys think it was a professional hit. Like, I think it was, right? I have a hard time believing one person did this by himself. Also, like, how did he know where the CEO of a major company would be at 6 a.m? There's no way he would have known that without some sort of insider information. So yeah, I mean, I would be, if I was the police, I would be asking, hey, who knew he would be at this hotel at this time? Because that's not just information that the public knows. So let's see where that goes. And I wouldn't be surprised if honestly there was even some people at UNH that may have been involved in this. Like, I mean, that's obviously just me speculating, but like that seems like some important information that most people wouldn't know. And he was in New York City for like the past 10 days. So he was, I guess, smart enough to use like just cash, always keep his face hidden. And he also seemed to be an expert on how to use the gun. Like it's also like a very unique type of gun that he used that had a suppressor, so it didn't make a lot of noise. They say that gun, like there's only a limited amount of people that could have bought it. So again, that all kind of points to that this was a little bit more of a professional hit. It was probably funded by other people or groups. So yeah, got that going. Let's read some more comments here. Kane Metal says, Mom ended up offing herself because she was hooked on oxys because the doc liked her. 80 milligrams a day for a woman. Oh my gosh, that is horrible. Honestly, like that is really sad because like you would think that like you're like a doctor is a medical professional. They should always be looking out for your best interests. Like so like you you give a lot of trust to them, right? Like, that's crazy that somebody would give that much of a drug that has a very high tolerance for addiction to someone, with such a petite body size as your mom seemed to have there. So that, I mean, just really sad to hear that. It's just like it sucks that our society is like that. Really sucks. Josh, sounds like a case for Dog the bounty hunted across the border. Yeah, I mean, like, who knows where this person might be? They might already be in Mexico. They might already be in Cuba, right? The chances of getting caught could be very low. And what if this ends up being like one of those cases where we never end up knowing who did it? It just becomes like some sort of big mystery. Kathy, I used to work for a company that calculated quarterly bonuses for pharmaceutical sales reps. The reps visited doctors' offices and hospitals to promote their drugs. Top sell doctors wand trip. That is insane. Oh man, this is like information that I like wish I didn't know. It just shows how like corrupt the whole capitalism is really great. I'm always going to say I'm a capitalist, but there's some really dark sides to capitalism. And I think when you're making healthcare like for profit like this, you start to see some of those downsides. And this has been going on for a long time. Like, it didn't just start. So it's also like, when we had the whole like C-19, COVID-19, a lot of these pharmaceutical companies made a lot of money, right? So yeah, it's always a little bit questionable there for sure. But you might actually indirectly own UnitedHealthcare as well. Like, if we go to VHT, one of the more popular healthcare ETFs, I've actually been buying a lot of this just because I like to just own the index here, since there's a lot of big winners and it's constantly changing. So if we go to their holdings, they own like 400 different companies. Look at who's number 2, UNH, and it makes up a pretty big chunk of it, because this is based on market cap. UNH worth $500 billion, so that makes up 8% of the total fund. Eli Lilly has also been going crazy here at 11%. Absolutely crazy here, guys. I'm surprised nobody's asked about any income ETFs. No dividend questions, guys. Come on. Let's go at it for a little bit more. It's not even 9 o'clock yet, guys. I know you guys have more questions, want to talk about a little bit more. I mean, that's also the other thing too, is that, a lot of people just passively invest their money these days, right? So you're just buying an index fund, you're just buying an ETF. Do you really know where that money's going to? So, you don't need to be a direct shareholder of UNH to have benefited from their practices, right? As I'm trying to illustrate with this VHT. If you buy SPY, it's the same thing. You're going to see United Health Group in there, right? I guarantee it's in here, right? It's one of the top healthcare companies. So if you own the S&P 500, it's going to own UNH. So that means potentially, if you think that any individual shareholder is complicit in all this, you too are, right? So it's a tough line for sure. Kane Metal, +1 to private docs, and they should only get paid when patients are healthy. So one thing that I've heard about this too is that like private equity is just buying everything, right? Apparently a lot of these like smaller, like, local neighborhood doctors, dentists, all that, they're cutting deals with private equity right now. And then it's not the local doctor or dentist that now gets to run their own business, right? It's they have to listen to whatever private equity wants, and private equity only cares about making a bottom line, more money. It's kind of the reason why, like, I travel a lot for my job, so I get to see a good part of the United States. Honestly, nowadays, if you go anywhere, everything starts to look the same. Have you ever noticed that every strip mall, same exact companies are in them, right? You always got those Michaels, you got like a Red Lobster, It's the same few companies. It's starting to just become a bunch of big chains everywhere. And it's also the design, right? Like the buildings are all built exactly the same now. There's nothing unique, and it's because they used like the same construction companies. They use the same construction suppliers. So it's all cookie cutter now. Everything looks the same. It's honestly really sad. Like, one of the cool things about living in a certain area is that it has its own unique design, and that's slowly going away. Really unfortunate. I worked for Merck for a bit. They have people track state gift laws. Some states limited gifts, healthcare companies could give doctors, others didn't. Yeah, I mean, I work as an auditor, so some of our like procedures are like based on how many gifts people are allowed to get. You're only allowed like certain amount of gift giving before, and if it reaches over a certain limit, you need to start getting this. You need to start getting further approvals. But honestly, if the whole like chain of commands is corrupt, they're gonna let that slide. So that's unfortunate as well. Cane Metal, I like this format. Usually don't sit on live feeds. This is awesome. Yeah, I'm one of those people that I'm a little bit too detail oriented. So like when I make my videos, I really need to do the research ahead of time, kind of know exactly what I need to say. But sometimes I think especially with like finance YouTube, you really don't need that as much. I mean, you should definitely know what you're talking about, right? I mean, we see a lot of people on YouTube talking that really shouldn't be talking, but I like to really script everything out. But I don't. That's very time consuming for me, and I don't really like that. So this is one that I actually wrote the script for this UNH situation yesterday. I was like, hey, I think this might be a bit more fun, putting that in quotes, to have as like more of a discussion, right? Like this is something that's directly impacting the community. It's something that I think would be better to talk about in that type of situation. But yeah, then you get, I'm not going to name any names, but then you get certain people that live stream every single day. I don't know, what are they talking about, man? There's not that much news that happens every day that you need to live stream it, or yeah, I'll just leave it there. Louise, have you sold any of your dividends at Citizen of the Year? So, yeah, I was thinking about selling my shares of Union Pacific. So that's, speaking of UNs, Union Pacific. So this is another one that I've held for several years. I made pretty good money on it. So I think I bought like in 2018. So it was at 153 then. It's at 233 today. So I made very good money on it, and they've paid a pretty good dividend yield in that time span. And it's pretty cool. Like we have a lot of railroads where I live, so I always get some sort of satisfaction saying, hey, like I own some of those railroads in very minute amounts, but it's not because UNP is a bad company. It's I think there's just probably bigger growth opportunities elsewhere. We've had a really good year in the stock market, but look at UNP as it's basically flat. But I at the same time I try not to buy and sell stocks. Like I try not to time the market essentially. So I try not to make emotional decisions like that. So hey, if I bought UNP, it's probably just best that I keep holding on to it. But even just going on to their financials, right? Looking at, and we saw at the start of this video, we saw how rapidly UNH is growing their revenues every year. Look how flat UNP's is, right? 2014, 22 billion. Look at it 10 years later, they're still making 22 billion. Like the company's just flat. Earnings per share. So this has went up. This is because they've probably bought back shares, right? So it's kind of an artificial way to increase earnings per share. But it's something that I don't like. Is it worth owning as an individual holding versus just buying a great ETF like an SCHD, an SCHG, and just doing that, right? So I'm sure UNP is part of some of these dividend ETFs, right? And you get a basket of some really good stocks consistently being tracked for their financials. And that might just be the better route. So SCHG. Also another great ETF here. So, I mean, I obviously was thinking about selling UNH because of this recent news, but I don't know. I'm probably just going to hold on to them. Um, if people tend to put extra emphasis on recent news, but 5 years from now, are we still gonna remember this day? Are we still gonna remember, oh, their CEO got assassinated? I mean, I don't know. I mean, there could be some reforms that come from this, but like generally, like news like this, like remember the whole CrowdStrike situation? I remember I think I was actually traveling the day that they had their whole like outage. So a lot of people got screwed over really bad at airports. So they dropped so much in just one day, right? Like it goes from 377 to 217. And look at what happened, guys. Slowly people start to forget what happened on the news. Days continue to pass. And CrowdStrike is now almost back to where it was trading at before that. So again, people short-term news, it's generally doesn't have that big of an impact in the long run. So, and all those people that bought at the bottom, they've made a lot of money, a lot of money. All right, so Drash asks, is there a UNH yield? I highly doubt there's a yield max for UNH. UNH or yield max, they specialize usually in stocks that are very volatile. And I don't think UNH is that volatile where they would it would benefit them that much to have one. All right, Norman, healthcare doesn't usually pay much in dividends, so they don't cross my attention. Yeah, I mean that is true. But I like if we look back at VHT, that doesn't mean that you can't make a lot of money here, right? So last 10 years they've been up 114%. So getting an 11% return plus about a 1.5% return in dividends, that's pretty solid in the grand scheme of things. So you can certainly make a lot of money in the healthcare sector. If you're a dividend investor, yeah, there's probably better alternatives in other sectors, but healthcare is one of those sectors that's also super safe. As I mentioned before, basically everybody needs some form of healthcare in their life, right? Especially nowadays, people live a lot longer. A lot of this is subsidized by the government. It's something that you're going to do, whether it's a bear market, a bull market. Nobody's going to be like, oh, stock market's not doing that great, can't get that leg replacement, right? Like people are going to be going to the doctors regardless of the market conditions. It's also like, a lot of people pay into their insurance, right? Like every 2 weeks, money gets taken out of my paycheck. So I feel more of an incentive to go to the doctor. This year, I've been really using my dental insurance. Talk about another scam there, but yeah. So if you're paying into insurance, right, then you're probably more likely to actually use it since it's not cheap. Kane Metal, LOL Groundhog Day. Yeah, I mean, I assume this is in reference to when I said that private equity is starting to make everything look the same. But yeah, it does feel like that a lot of times now. Hey, Michael Anthony, kind of look like Brian from Family Guy with that avatar. What is this about in first time here? Yeah, I mean, the genesis for this is regarding the news about the UNH CEO that got assassinated this past week, and a lot of people were very, very happy about the news, and a lot of people are kind of rooting for the assassin, right? And again, I think about if he is caught and he is in a jury trial, you only need like one or two people to flip for this person to be found not guilty. Like people can get away with a lot of crimes these days. Kane Metal, thoughts on MPW? So I've been a long-term shareholder of MPW, and this has been a very love-hate relationship. So, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. You see here, it says short interest is 38%. That is a really high number. Usually, the more higher people are shorting it, that usually means there's something fundamentally bad about the company. So MPW, I don't follow all the news, but like there was a lot of controversy that there was like basically one of their tenants, they also held equity in them. So that's kind of a way to prop up your numbers without really having money. Like you can't like if you give $500 to your brother who then gives it right back to you, like you didn't really make any money, right? Like uh yeah, I mean MPW, I bought this like 2018. I probably bought it at the worst possible times. Like I bought it at its all-time highs. It has went down and down. To their credit, they're constantly putting out like news releases about like, oh, here's why people that are shorting our company are wrong. But there has been, again, last I checked, there's been a lot of insider selling, which is generally not a good sign, and no insider buying. So, if I was an actual executive of the company, right, and if I truly believed in my company and I saw that we were trading at a whole $4, I would be buying nonstop, right? Because I really believe in my company. I know what outsiders are saying about our company is not right. So I would be buying up shares. The fact that they're not doing that and that it's this absurdly cheap, to me at least, that means there's probably, where there's smoke, there's fire, right? So they've had a dividend cut as well. So if we go to their dividend history, so when I was buying it, I remember I always got that like quarterly payment, right? And then it raised it a couple years in a row, did pretty good during C19, and then they cut it actually like in September of last year. So 15 cents. And then they cut it once again in September of this year. So September is, every year companies usually raise their dividend. It seems like they are now cutting it every September. So that's definitely not a good sign either. So it's up to you. Do you think that the news that the short reports are overblown? Then you might be getting this company at a huge bargain, right? Um, but you could also be buying this at a bad time too, where it turns out a lot of those reports are correct, and then potentially could lose a lot of money. So I'm just holding on to my shares. I've already made my bed. Like I'm not buying any more shares. I'm just collecting that dividend every quarter, which continues to go down. But MPW is such a small position in my portfolio that it doesn't really even matter anymore. So I guess I could sell it for like tax purposes, but I'm just holding on to it. I think there's probably much better real estate companies out here. So if we go to the Vanguard real estate ETF and look at their holdings, Prologis is doing really good. Like where I live, there's so many of these warehouses with their logo. So this is a company that's doing really good. Equinix. So I have this one in my portfolio. This is doing really good in recent. It's done very good ever since I've held it, but it's went up a lot recently. So these like Digital Realty, Equinix, they are in like the data center type of real estate, and that's really important for the future. That type of real estate. Of course, there's always the good old realty income, not reality. Get very good starting yield right now. Has actually went right back down. So you're getting almost a 6% yield. You get 15,000 different properties. So this is like with real estate, the thing is you can't really focus on the share price too much. Like I own my home, right? Am I checking how much my home is selling for on Redfin every single day? No. And I think, but that's the thing with the stock market though. With real estate companies, you constantly have the share price shoved in your face. At the same time, ever since I've owned realty income, they have paid me excuse me, they pay me consistent monthly income every single month. And this would have happened had I looked at the share price every day, or if I had not looked at their share price every day. Thankfully, O hasn't cut their dividend. They've never cut their dividend. They've been a public company since 1994. No dividend cuts, right? You're getting almost a 6% starting yield, which is super juicy. But people, I think, look at the share price a little bit too much with real estate companies. All right. Pfizer looks, this is coming from Michael Anthony. Pfizer looks undervalued when the company made $1.06, which was a 44-cent beat with 2 more drugs approved in the pipeline. And the CEO raised the outlook and has a 42-cent. Yeah, I saw that Pfizer, I used to own Pfizer back in the day, no longer hold them, but they've really gotten beat down. Like, again, keep in mind the rest of the market is up like 30%. So for them to be down 10%, that means they are really underperforming. Starting yield is now at a ridiculous 6.6%. You're honestly, yeah. I mean, look at this article. It's saying Pfizer is now starting to become a strong buy because it's too cheap to ignore. Fundamentals are improving. As you mentioned in your comment, the guidance, let me remove your comment so we can actually see this. Fundamentals are improving. Q3 earnings looked great. Anytime the company upgrades their guidance, that's also a very good, like that's a green flag. Because they know if they don't meet their expectations, like if they raise their guidance and they don't meet those expectations, people love to panic sell. They will sell that thing real quick. And then this might have been what you're talking about. There's growing markets for them to get into. And yeah, like, according to this author, there's potential that the stock is undervalued by 32%. And you're getting a super juicy dividend while you wait. So yeah, I mean, the market tends to sometimes have a severe sell-off that's not maybe supported by the actual fundamentals. So keep that in mind, right? A lot of companies have been doing really good. Like they keep reaching new all-time highs. So whenever I'm trying to buy my stocks, I try to find things that I think are at a discount. So that's why I generally try not to buy things when they're at their 52-week high. I try to buy things that I think are cheap, that the market is overselling. And that's usually how I've been able to find my bargain plays. So yeah, I mean, that's a good question, Michael, on Pfizer. I think you're getting a great starting yield. As you mentioned, they seem to be doing some pretty good things. All right. So AT&T making new highs with doing a job for a company worth $1 billion, which investor days raises the outlook, doing a buyback with an upgrade to 20. Yeah, AT&T was one of the first companies that I bought when I first started investing. Wow, they're up 40% this year. That's incredible. Yeah, they had. I remember when I bought it, they had some questionable moves, and this stock didn't do very well because I think I bought it. Let's see here. So 2018, it was trading at $37. Yeah, I remember. When I first started investing, like the biggest thing that I looked at was the starting dividend yield, which is definitely not a smart thing to do. So I was like, oh, hey, I'm collecting a 6% yield. What's the worst that can happen? Well, then it just continued to go down and down and down. And then the dividend, I forget if it got cut. I'm pretty sure it got cut somewhere along the way. So they were paying, 49 cents, 50 cents, 52 cents. Oh, there was a big dividend cut in 2022. So yeah, this is what I find very funny about YouTube. A lot of people, they act like dividends are always guaranteed forever. Just because they've had maybe a good track record of paying them, or not even a good track record, right? There's ETFs that have come out this year, and people are like, oh man, this ETF has paid out dividends since its inception in February. That means I will always get this dividend for all of eternity, right? That's just so ridiculous to me why people think like that. But yeah, I mean, this is evidence that even great companies, and AT&T, if I remember correctly, were they a dividend like aristocrat? So even like the most secure companies, they can have dividend cuts too. Looks like they've consistently paid that 27 3/4 or 3 fractions of a penny there. past couple of years. So still doing pretty solid here. I mean, yeah, I mean, if you bought it in the last year, you've done very well. Michael Anthony, why did it drop this much in 2 days? Well, what I find kind of tragic here is that UNH, actually the day that the CEO got assassinated, the stock was actually up. Like, oh man, like you have to feel pretty bad that if you're the leader of a company and you die and the stock price goes up. Oh man, that's tough. But it was up the day that he actually got assassinated, but then the last 2 days it's went down almost 10%. Now, how much of that is because of the CEO, and how much of that is there's a lot of negative sentiment right now about healthcare companies? Again, that's why I think this is just more short-term news. There was times earlier this year when UNH was down, and then it recovered, and I'm pretty confident that it's going to go back up. Kane Metal, I'm slated to max my 401k, my HSA, and my Roth next year. Any thoughts on where to go next, or is this a question out of scope for this conversation? Listen, there's nothing out of scope on these live streams. We can talk about whatever. It doesn't even have to be investing related. Okay, so HSA is a great one. I think a lot of people don't know how powerful an HSA is. Let's talk to ChatGPT about it. Is having an HSA a good idea? I honestly think, like, and I work as like an accountant. I think HSAs are the best investment tool. Not every company offers this, but there's so many tax benefits. There's ways to grow your money tax-free withdrawals. It's really good. And yeah, I just loved having one. I didn't opt into it this past year, and then I was dumb and I forgot to opt into the HSA for this upcoming year because I missed the enrollment period. So it just renewed what I had last year. But HSA, super powerful. Absolutely. I think it's honestly the best type of account. Helps with building an emergency fund. You can use it for medical costs, which almost all of us have. Really good. You could deduct it off your taxes. So HSA, really good there. All right. So any thoughts on where to go next, or is this a question out of scope for conversation? I was thinking taxable account with SCHD. Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, it's good that you're maxing out the 401k, the Roth. Trying to think if there's any other like tax advantage accounts, assuming you have like the emergency funds, you've already paid off your debt, credit cards, anything like that, car payments, right? Like for me, when I was first starting out, I had like coming out of college, I had student loan debt. So I invested a little bit of my paycheck, but what I went really hard on was trying to pay off all my debt first. So student loans, and this was like, this was right before there was that pause on student loan interest and payments for like 4 years. I remember there was that whole, we should get our student loans forgiven. I think it actually got passed by Joe Biden. I think it was like up to $10,000. And I remember I was really mad. Well, I was really mad because I personally don't believe in like student loan forgiveness. But two, I think I had just missed the cutoff by like a few months. So basically I was going to get punished for paying off my student loans, which, not a big fan of student loan forgiveness. But I do think that school should educate people more on careers and the risks of going to college, because I feel like we only ever talk about the good things about going to college. And there's a lot of people that should not be in college that pay an arm and a leg. Like there's some schools that you're paying like $50,000 a year. I mean, that's like a starting salary for some people, right? Like that's ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, obviously this is not financial advice, but yeah, I mean, I would be going hard after paying my debt into, just saving as much as I can. Obviously I don't know what, retirement goals might look like, living expenses, but I try to save up a good amount of my paycheck because I know I want to retire early, and I know dividend investing especially is a way to get there. Norman, the assassin used a big silencer, so it looks like it was a professional hit, but he wrote stuff on the shell casing, so that sounds personal. Yeah, no, I definitely believe that too as well. I think this was either a person or an organization that was directly impacted by some BS that UNH did in the past. And even though Brian Thompson and this person probably never knew each other, if you're the leader of a company, people will hold you responsible for stuff like that. So I think that's what happened here. Kane Metal, speaking of REITs and early investing days, made $50,000 in one day on a short squeeze on WPG, and they were going bankrupt and lost $50,000 2 days later. WPG, which one is that? Oh, it went bankrupt, right? So it doesn't exist anymore. Was this a Wall Street Bets like fiasco? Speaking of Wall Street Bets, oh my gosh, the stock Palantir has done so good recently. So this like for some of the OG investors, like Palantir was one of those stocks that people talked about for years. Like, oh, this is going to be the big breakout stock. But for years, it did absolutely nothing. Like, if you go back in my videos, I was making videos about Palantir like in 2020. And for years, it just didn't do much. Like, it moved. Sometimes it got up. Sometimes it would fall right back down. And then there was a time where it got like under $10 for the longest time. It was trading there. And oh my gosh, recently this stock has went to the moon. And this is definitely all over Wall Street Bets. Like past year, it's up 345%. I remember I did options trading on Palantir. So that means if I owned my shares of Palantir that I bought probably back in like 2021, oh man, I would have made so much money if I just held on to them. But I was doing options trading with Palantir. I mean, I made some decent money doing that, but oh man, those shares would have been worth a lot right now. And look at all these like, people doing their analysis. They're now saying it's a strong sell. I like, listen, PE ratio of 189. Vast majority of people, I remember from doing my video on Palantir, this is not a super easy company to understand. So let me hide that so you guys can actually see. So yes, there's a lot of sell ratings here. Sell, strong sell, 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 strong sell, and a hold. So yeah, I mean, once I start to see some of these like ridiculous climbs up, like if your chart looks like this, where there's just a big like, it's curved really up in a very small amount of time, like it is here, there's usually a lot of euphoria built into the share price where it's no longer just trading at fundamentals. It's now just trading at like people's sentiment. And I'm really starting to see this with like MicroStrategy, with Bitcoin. You guys, it's good old Misty. But I mean, this is just insane. Also, same thing with like Palantir. Palantir does have a PE ratio, so it does actually make money. But MicroStrategy, you'll notice there's no PE ratio. The earnings per share is negative, so they don't actually make money right now. But it depends on how bullish you are on Bitcoin, right? So I'm personally someone that's kind of indifferent to Bitcoin. So if you're bullish on Bitcoin, it could potentially make a lot of money. I mean, it's made a lot of people money in the last year, up 600%. That's insane. Okay, where are we here? I think AT&T cut the dividend when they sold off Warner Bros. Yeah, that sounds familiar. I think I remember seeing those headlines a couple of years ago. Michael Anthony, I know UnitedHealthGroup was down, but all 9 companies in that sector were down today, and CNC closed at the lowest level, which made a new. Yeah, that's the thing too, is that it doesn't necessarily have to be the company that was impacted by the news for the whole sector to sell off. And I think you're going to start to see that a lot more with people just buying certain index funds. So like, let's say I'm a big institution, right? And I just want to buy semiconductors, right? So let's say NVIDIA has some big bad news, right? Let's say they lower their guidance. Well, because NVIDIA did that, people are going to start to share that same sentiment with these other holdings. So just because the news may have impacted NVIDIA, that doesn't mean it's not going to impact Qualcomm, Texas Instruments. So you'll start to see that sell off. Also, a lot of these people might just be owning sector ETFs like this. So they might call up their broker and be like, hey, I don't want to hold NVIDIA anymore, like lower my exposure to NVIDIA. What they're going to do is they're just going to sell off the stocks ETF here. And that means all these holdings are going to come down with it. So that's probably what happened to UNH here. CVS and CNC both down, but CNC had a new low today, which made $1.65, which was over the $1.35, even much higher, around 42 billion. What is CNC? I can't remember off the top of my head. Corporation. It's a healthcare enterprise, underinsured families. Okay, yeah, I mean, this one hasn't been doing that hot in the last year. Super low PE ratio. But yeah, how's it been doing the last couple of days? Yeah, I mean, it's been down as well. I don't know. I mean, are you saying they had earnings recently? Washington Prime Group. Palantir to partner something with BBA. Yeah, I mean, listen, I've been hearing these rumors that they're going to be doing this with the U.S. government, with the military. I've heard these rumors for years, right? And I guess to people's credit, the stock is finally doing really good. Oh man, look who just joined the chat. The good old Julio. The July is here. Warriors option income. Yeah, guys, I've been making some solid money with options, and I appreciate all the people in the Discord too. Like we have a Discord with one of the channels being like options trading, and people have been really getting into that, and I've been making some decent money with my NVIDIA options. I honestly think like if you have a good portfolio that's built to do options trading, I do think honestly that I honestly think options could be better than dividends for sure. Because even like something like NVIDIA, which basically gives no dividend, you can make a lot in your own quote unquote dividends by doing options trading. And for all of us that love income ETFs, the way that income ETFs are essentially giving you these big dividend yields is because they're doing what we're doing here with just doing their own options trading. So, but yeah, I mean, NVIDIA trades at 142 right now. Yeah, you can definitely make a lot of money here, guys. Definitely make a lot of money. Like I made hundreds of dollars in the last couple of weeks with NVIDIA. Definitely more than I would have made with like a big high yield dividend paying ETF or company. So yeah, I mean, I'm hoping to make more options videos. They generally don't do as well just because I don't think people understand how beneficial they can be. Kane Metal is up 90% selling year to date options. Yeah, I mean, I could believe that. Like, especially in like a nice bull market like this, where you can maybe have a bad trade, then flip it next week. It does very good. I can believe that for sure. I mean, 90% is really juicy. That's 3 times the market return. So congrats on that. Selling options in stocks is better than ETF income. Yeah, for sure. I know you've been doing a lot of income options trading in our Discord. So yeah, I mean, you start to get some of these really juicy premium stocks, ETFs. You can make a lot of money in options. A lot of money. Caffey, members of Congress recently bought Palantir. What do they know? Yeah. You guys know about the ETFs that track like Nancy Pelosi and like Ted Cruz, or this is one of them here. This is NANC, the Unusual Whales Subversive Democrat Trade. This is the one that tracks like Democrat leaders. And you can tell they've done very well. They're up 39% for the year. So it's like 6% higher than the overall market. Honestly, not a bad ETF here. You can see they've done very well since they've launched. They definitely know something, right? People on Congress, they sit on a lot of these like meetings where they determine how government money is being spent, or what laws might be impacted that might benefit certain companies, which might hurt certain companies. I mean, yeah, this one is named after Nancy Pelosi, but she's not the only one to benefit off this, right? Like she's worth, I think, like $100 million plus for a job that pays like around 200,000 a year. Like the math just doesn't make sense. But the way she's able to do it is that Congress basically has a green flag to do insider trading. I mean, it is illegal, but nobody's going to persecute them for doing insider trading. It's very sad. Like we could do another video on how corrupt this is. But yeah, I mean, and this is all like there's one that follows there's one that follows Republicans too. I think it's called like Cruz. I know it's named after Ted Cruz. And let me do a quick Google search here. Oh, it's KRUZ. Yeah, this one, it's not doing as good as the Democratic one, but it's still doing pretty good, 26%. It's kind of funny how that works. But if you guys tried to do insider trading, though, it's very highly illegal for you guys to do insider trading. You guys will go to jail if you do it. So speaking of Brian Thompson, the guy that got whacked, he was also being investigated for insider trading. Down. So he was being accused of insider trading and fraud, whether the nation's largest insurer was unfairly restricting. I mean, yeah. I mean, you could argue that UNH is a monopoly. I don't think a lot of people would argue with that. Yeah, guys, we'll probably wrap up here in like the next 10 minutes. So, get in any of your last questions, comments. I mean, you know how much money these people already make? Like at some point, like they're just being greedy. Like if you're already worth like hundreds of millions of dollars, if you get paid $10 million right from your job, do you need to be doing all this other like backdoor shenanigans? Like, man, I'd be happy with $1 million paycheck, right? I'd be happy with like a $200,000 paycheck. Like at some point, like how much money is too much money? It starts to get you in trouble like this, right? It can cost you your life. Let's look at what how the markets have been doing in certain sectors here. So this is the 1 month performance of different industries. So we can really see semiconductors have had a little bit of a sell-off. Looks like industrials have had a little bit of a sell-off here as well. Healthcare for sure. UNH. I keep trying to buy in some of these energy companies, but they keep going down as well. But I mean, I'm pretty bullish on, oil. Like that's not going anywhere. So I'm going to keep trying to buy some, keep getting a higher starting dividend yield. All major insurances are monopoly. Yeah, I mean, and then Julio, I don't think you were here earlier when I was talking about this, but like, at least where I live, all the companies are just starting to get bought out by the same company. So now there's like literally no options. So if you want to get healthcare treatment somewhere, you're very limited in where you could go. So it's pretty ridiculous. More, what is this? Another insider trading one? MOAR. Are you sure it's not Moat? I think Joseph Carlson owned this one. You can argue that a lot of companies have a moat. I think that's very subjective. It's done pretty solid in the last year, 5 years. What does it actually hold? Bristol Myers Squibb, just only 55 companies. Salesforce done very well too. CRM up 45% in the last year. Past 5 days up almost 10%. They now pay a dividend too, which is nice. But yeah, guys, this is one that I remember there was some bad news about this, 2023, but they've really recovered really well since then. I think they're now in the Dow too, so that's pretty good. Getting homeowners insurance is becoming difficult. Yeah, especially I heard if you live in Florida, you guys are paying so much in insurance. It's getting really ridiculous out here, for sure. Kane Metal, oh no, I was joking. You were talking about when is it enough? Purposely. Oh yeah. No, I mean that's the thing. When is it enough? And I think even just some personal reflection here. When I first started investing, making money out of college, if you had told me $100,000, that's a lot of money when you're 21. But now, 7 years later, $100,000, that's nothing to me, right? Now it's how can I make $200,000? How can I make $300,000? So I assume, yeah, when you're making millions of dollars, smaller amounts of money that is a lot of money to ordinary people starts to look really small. So I guess I could see where that greed comes from, and humans are just greedy by nature, for sure. Yeah, definitely not telling you guys about the Dominican Republic. What happens in the DR stays in the DR. Oh man, good times though. Good times. Yeah. But yeah, going back to this heat map. Make sure you guys get your last questions, comments in. Hit that like button. Any stocks that you guys are buying right now? I know Amazon's been doing really well recently. Been trying to buy into a little bit of that. PayPal also been doing really well this year too. I was doing some options trading on that one earlier this year. Up 10% in the last month. That's pretty good. AMD, Google. Yeah, AMD, this is one when I remember when I got my first job out of college, me and my coworker would talk about that. I think AMD was $10 back in the day. It is just crazy how much it has exploded. Yeah, 2018, it was at trading at $20, $15 a share. And we thought it was overvalued back then. and there's been times where it's been close to it's been over $200 a share. So that would have been a crazy good investment. Absolutely. So what is ARM trading at these days? Been waiting for this to pull back. Yeah, trading at 140. This is one that I keep having an eye on, really hoping that it has a sell-off so I can start buying more into it. Google, this is another stock that's been in the news. Oh, not Goop. So these curve ETFs, they have been doing pretty well. They don't get as much attention in the income ETF space, but I think I need to shout them out next time. They've been doing pretty solid. Giving you a pretty good yield here, a little over 1% a month. Haven't seen much NAV erosion. Monthly payers, pretty good there for sure. But the actual Google that you were talking about, or Alphabet, still up good amount last year. PE ratio is pretty solid at 21. Just crossed that $2 trillion market cap. But yeah, I mean, this one's obviously been in the news because is it a monopoly? Honestly, with how strong Chat GPT and AI might be in the future. There's honestly, I do have some like concerns about how big Google search monopoly might actually start to shrink. I mean, could argue that it's no longer a monopoly. I mean, sure, people definitely still use it, but like in the future, if AI really starts to hit off, like why would people use Google search anymore? Obviously, Google makes money in other ways, right? YouTube, Android, but cash cow is Google search. Google search has gotten really annoying too. Like anytime you search something, like the first 10 results are just ads. Like that's annoying. I don't blame people for using alternatives. Loaded up on BBAI. Big Bear AI Holdings. What a name. What a name. Man, it's done very well. So this is essentially a penny stock. I assume it. Yeah, I was gonna guess it has an IPO that long ago. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you probably know why the stock has done very well. I know a lot of these like newer AI companies, it's more based on hype than it is anything actually tangible. Cane metal. One you don't hear much about is NTAP. Storage is important, just like NVIDIA or AMD. For sure. Yeah, I think honestly, if it's anything like semiconductor related or technology like that, very good sector to be in, I think. Up 46% on the last year, $26 billion market cap. Been around for a while, I'm assuming. Yeah, this looks like a pretty solid one. I might have to dig into it a little bit more. PE ratio is still pretty low, even though it seems to have done very well in the last year. But all right, guys, it's been almost 2 hours now, so appreciate everybody stopping by. Been a fun time. Probably record this one more time to make like a quick video about the UNH situation. But appreciate everybody stopping by. Definitely have to do these more often. Appreciate you stopping by, Kane Metal, all the other ones, Michael Anthony, Luis, Julio. Certainly forgetting some people, I'm sure, and anybody who's watching on the not live feed. But yeah, we'll definitely try to do this maybe one more time before the holidays, potentially. Kefi, of course, yes, appreciate you as well. I think you joined the Discord, so appreciate you being in there. Make sure anybody else is part of our Discord, have some great conversations. Dresh also was in here, trading strategy. Dan, if you're still watching, appreciate all you guys. Michael, did you look at CNC resin earnings, even an insider bought? Yeah, okay, listen, anytime an insider's buying a lot, there might be a lot of reasons why an insider might sell, but there's usually only one reason why they might buy, right? If they're buying, that usually means they're bullish of the company. So CNC, yeah, that's usually a good sign. All right, guys, I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks a lot.